Welcome to the stage, artist, filmmaker, entrepreneur, and hip-hop pioneer, Fab Five Freddy.
Great to be here. How you guys doing? Man, getting ready to sail on the high seas. Yes, indeed. Well, we got some more friends that are about to come out here and join us. And I got some questions, some conversation. It's about to go down. So I just got in a little while ago. Flew in here from New York, very early morning flight. Whew, man. And it's about to be on. Yes, indeed. We're going to have some fun on the high seas, y'all. Yes, my man said real high. That's what's up. Anything goes, baby. Yes, yes, yes. This is great. Man, I can't wait to talk to these guys. Here we go.
Hello.
Amen.
What's up, family?
Yes.
I guess I'm coming out too, yeah.
Yeah, might as well.
Diplo's in the building. Just Blaze is in the building.
Yes, sir.
That's what's up, baby.
Let's talk
We're about
about
to
it.
get into this. Well, guys, I want to start it off at the top with one of the biggest technical shifts, innovative earthquakes going on. AI, machine learning, biggest developments in tech today, and poised to heavily affect the making of music. I'm curious about each one of you guys' thoughts. I'll start with you, Diplo, AI.
When AI is used for music, it's, I was introduced to it about a year ago, and it was some websites that were really bad, that had noisy kind of generated sounds, and the words weren't that accurate. And then they started making these machine learning voices for different artists, and you probably guys all heard that that record that made it to Spotify. It was called Ghostwriter. It was like a Weeknd and Drake song.
Yep.
That was actually a really good Weeknd and Drake song. I liked it, and it made it all the way to Spotify, and it made people turn their heads and be like, this is a big deal now. These songs sound like the artist for real. So there's a lot of just controversy around what to do with that kind of material, but as a producer, as someone that creates music, I see it as a tool. I recently did a record for a country singer, and he has a really low falsetto, but the song we wrote for him had a really high voice, and he couldn't sing it, but his voice engine could. So we were able to use that on the song. So it actually helped us a lot. And he was kind of a big mainstream singer, so there was a lot of information for them to take from to get his voice to sound really good, the machine learning. So, on one side, I've always been a very progressive person when it comes to technology. When I first started my career, I was the first guy to leak all my mixtapes on the internet, give away my songs for free when, bands were fighting with Napster back then. So I was always promoting direct to audience from the beginning. This is something different. But at the end of the day, the labels do have those contracts with the artists. I think they just got to figure out the discrepancies about what that means. Is their voice owned too? Is their style owned? I'm not sure how that's going to end up in court, but as a tool, as a producer, I think it's very useful, and it's getting better every day.
There we go. I like that vibe. Just Blaze.
This guy's much more politically correct. No. I agree with you. Ultimately, let me ask you a question.
Okay.
So you think about it, right? Was Grandmaster Flash cheating?
Was he what?
Was he cheating?
Not at all. He was innovating.
He used the technology that became available to him, and we ended up getting the fader. We ended up getting direct drive turntables.
Right.
And like I used to have this argument a lot when Serato came out. Right? People are like, oh, Serato was cheating. How is it cheating? It just allows me to not have to carry crates. Right? It's kind of the same thing with AI. Used correctly, it's a powerful tool. Used the wrong way, we've all seen Terminator.
So I want to share an AI project that I kind of helped to initiate, and it got a lot of positive response. So there's a rapper named the DOC, who was a part of Dr. Dre's crew in the very beginning, and he released a solo record, which was incredible. And his career was off to a huge place that it unfortunately never got to. Theoretically, if the DOC had a blew up, Dre may have never had a reason to go out and find a Snoop and do all the things that eventually happened. But sadly, the DOC, just when his ship was taken off, he had an auto accident that severely damaged his vocal cords. So he speaks with a very heavy rasp to this day. He works closely with Dre, has been involved in all the great records that Dre's made and all the acts, and Dre's been loyal, searched for every kind of doctor. Nothing could fix his damaged vocal cords. And I had the idea, and I reached out to propose to him, had you ever given any thought to having AI recreate your voice? I found a company called Suno that was very interested in working with him. So that's hopefully something that can happen. This is a guy, this will grasp his early vocals, and then he could write a rap and, get back in the game in a way. And a lot of people were very responsive to that. I'm curious.
100%.
Curious about you guys' thoughts on sampling. I mean, once again, being a huge tool in the beginning of making hip-hop music, it was a lot of backlash to sampling. A lot of musicians were straight hating on it. And I just found that is seemingly comparable to the negative look at artificial intelligence making music. I'm just curious if any thoughts on that.
Want to go first, then I'll go?
I wouldn't be a musician if I wasn't obsessed with the art of sampling. I think my first love was like Jay Swift from the Far Side and DJ Shadow and Large Professor. These guys who used just weird stuff that then they made hip hop records. Or when Brand New Being sampled that Edie Brickell sample, like that like rock and roll record.
Right.
These records that were like in my wheelhouse as a young kid, and then I heard the hip hop versions. It really made me go like, wow, this is something I can do, because I wasn't a good musician. I wasn't in a band, and I couldn't afford like a piano or a guitar, but I had records, and I had a cheap cassette player back then to make loops up, and I learned what sampling was. And then of course, I think Wild Style and Style Wars for me were like, those movies were like the Bible. So I was like, I really learned the art form of hip hop, and I always thought my favorite part of hip hop was the idea of creating something out of samples. Not just, when you can just like take a loop like I've done. So the Clash I use for Paper Planes, we do a loop and we add some modern Atlanta-based, sounds to it. But sometimes you can use like 5 or 6 samples, like on the Beastie Boys' Paul's Boutique. Some of the records had like 16 samples in a record. I was like, that chaos I loved. And there's an art form to just like, building on what we've already had, like the fabrics of creative music that we've done in America. So I've always been obsessed with like that. That's why I make music, because I was obsessed with those guys like Premier and these guys who are flipping samples like into something new and darker and weirder or happier or whatever it is. And then as I got older as a producer, I started learning you don't make as much money, like sampling things, so then you do learn to play instruments. You do hire people if you can afford it, and the Dre way, like you find someone like Scott Storch or somebody that can actually fulfill your musical ideas to be bigger. You learn that as you get older. You just become better as a producer. But that art form, the chaos, got me into it. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for just those first pioneers of sampling.
Love that.
Chaos is a great way to put it.
Yes, chaos,
Really-
more chaos.
You listen to like Nation of Millions, right? It's just literal chaos. It's noise. But as a 10-year-old, it was the coolest thing that I had ever heard in my life.
Yes, indeed.
You know, like listening to that album. You know, it's funny. So me and my friends argue about this all the time because you brought up Paul's Boutique. For me, it's Licensed to Ill, right? Like, but it's I listen. I get it. Paul's Boutique is a hallmark in the art of sampling. But for whatever reason, for me, like when I met MCA, the first, bro, let's do License to Ill all over again. He's like, no. I'm like, oh, bro, but that's where my heart lied, right? Between that and it's probably an age-related thing, right? Between that and Nation of Millions, it was organized chaos.
It was the Bomb Squad. They was in effect.
Yes.
Doing incredible things in the studio. I was in the studio with P when they were mixing a lot of that stuff. It was amazing.
They turned like James Brown records into like punk rock.
Right.
Like the way they use those samples. There's still that one horn sample that one of you guys know what it is. The one from there's one horn sample that we can never find. I'm like always asking I'm in a group chat with you, I think too, that we have like we couldn't. There's like some samples that we still
trying to figure out.
From that album.
So now, I play video games, and you guys have both created a lot of music for video games, which I find fascinating, just to talk about that process. So please share some of your favorite video games that you've worked on and the music for those games.
I would say for me, NBA Street Volume 2. Thank you. It's that there's probably not a week that goes by that I don't get asked, when are they remastering that and when are they putting that back out? Wow. Yeah, no, it's probably some of my greatest work ever, for sure.
Now, was NBA Street, that was the game where guys could do the really incredible moves, jump, double Dutch, flip.
I mean, when you think, but we set out to really prove something with that record, like with that game. Like you turned it on, the first thing you hear is they reminisce over you. The first voice you hear is Bobito, right? Like we were really trying to make sure that we understood, or that people understood, that the players understood that we were coming at it from a place of love and respect, you know, for our culture and for the music. And there's not many games that you can say that about.
Wow. Now I'm gonna have to go back and fire up one of my old systems to put some NBA Street on. Diplo.
Yeah, I think you only got to get it on PS2, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, I think that's about it. Yeah.
Wow. Diplo, please share video games and some of the music.
Well, I didn't really do much music for video games. I did a video game for this really obscure Japanese game a couple of years ago. But I always loved the GTA series because it had the radio. And the radio was awesome. Like when you're a young person, that was like you're riding around robbing people or whatever in the game. You put your station on.
Grand Theft Auto.
Yeah, you could do like the rock station, the hip hop station,
Right.
and they had new records on there. They
had
debuted
beats on it,
songs, and it was beats, and it was just a dope place to like. When you're young, you can experience independence a little bit, like riding around when you're like 11 years old, or whatever, and put on the station and figure out what you're doing. So I love that game. I love the culture around GTA. I was really influenced by the early 8-bit composers too. Like you guys all know the Super Mario Brothers theme song and stuff, but there were some really awesome Japanese composers that did work in the 8-bit sphere. And I actually sampled my first record I ever put out was called Diplo Rhythm, and I remember I sampled the Platoon game.
Right.
It was like a Contra kind of game for Nintendo, and I sampled that, and that was like my first record on like wax that I put out like in 2000. Yeah.
Fascinating. So for me, I was talking backstage with Just Blaze and how in the early days of hip hop, once you got up to the DJ who was playing in a park at a block party or whatever, and if you got a chance to get in his ear to ask any kind of questions, I immediately noticed that all the DJs were pretty much tech nerds, and that made me feel very comfortable because I got an inner nerd going on. And at the early days, it made me realize that these guys had that technical engineers type of spirit. But for you, Just, it's a little different because your dad worked in technology. He used to write programming and share that.
My dad was a computer programmer. He worked for Pfizer and their IT department. And some of my earliest childhood memories were just going to work with him, on the weekends, right? Because he used to have to work overtime. And just watching the giant tapes spinning and the discs and him sitting at the computer. And I just thought it was the coolest thing ever, And when I got a little bit older, I started to write my own code. I think I was like fifth grade. I started writing my own video games. Didn't know what the heck I was doing. I was just trying to do what my dad did, right? And that translated into eventually making music on the computer as well. So if it wasn't for him doing that, we might not be sitting here having this conversation.
So as the technology has, grown and expanded, you've got a certain comfortability factor.
1,000%. Yeah, no, like I was saying earlier, it's when you embrace technology, right? Or at least for me, my embracement of technology. I don't even know if embracement is a real word, but it is now. Thank you. No, like that's how I got to where I got to. It was watching my dad code, trying to figure out what he was doing, saying one of the biggest influences ever. My parents bought us a computer, I guess like 83, 84, right? Soul to Soul comes out with the Back to Life video. And I see Nelly Hooper with the Mac in the Back to Life video, and I'm like, yo, Mom, I need that, right? So she's all right, I don't know what that is. All right, well, we're gonna go figure it out, right? Went to Software, Etc., which I think was a chain back in the 80s. And I walked in the store and I said, I need whatever Soul to Soul is doing on TV. And they're like, what, sold? What, dude? What? And I'm like, all right, I see that MIDI Workshop. And I bought this program called MIDI Workshop that was made by Creative Labs. Wow. And that's what put me on the path. It was watching that video.
That's amazing. I just want to say we have a mutual friend. I was doing my research on you that recently passed away, DJ Mark, the 45 King. Yes. And Mark and I were really good friends. And Mark was, whatever he was playing around with tech-wise, I would look over his shoulder.
Right.
Mark was the first person that I know to use the Macintosh, early Macintosh, for sampling. He also had an early laptop. I remember one day being we lived in the same high-rise in Manhattan, and I'd go up and hang out with Mark, and he had a PowerBook. It was an early MacBook, PowerBook, 180C, and he was paying bills, and I went out and brought one right away, and it was just fascinating. I know you guys worked, and when Mark passed, you had some music that you dropped, which I thought.
Yeah, no, Mark was a great guy. I don't want to pivot too far left, but miss him. There's one of the things that I will say. I think this is the only thing that I'll say actually, is that when you have somebody who just does it because they love it, that's when you tend to see the most success, right? Like people always ask me, like, what's the key to success? What's the key to getting rich as a producer? I'm like, no, do it because you love it. Don't do it because you're motivated by the finances or by the image, right? Do it because you love it. As long as you do it because you, like, I got records of yours. Did your name used to be Diploticus?
Yeah. That was the original.
I have 45s of yours.
Yeah.
Right?
Turntable Lab.
Yes.
Okay.
And like, I didn't know that he ended up becoming Diplo. I was just like, oh, these beats are dope. So I bought the records, right? But ultimately, that's what I'm saying. Like, you do it because you love it. If you do it because you love it and you continue to do it, the success will always come.
Well, you'll be a lot happier too. Because if you just measure it by success only, you're never going to find it.
Right, exactly.
You have to be, I was in Japan recently and I was going to those record shops that we used, back in the day, you go to Shibuya and you go to those old vinyl shops where they have all the rarest records you're going to find.
Right.
Me and him were like in that world where you're like trying to find records that are $400, $500, Japanese jazz, whatever it is. And I went back like last month, so I haven't been I've been just sampling off of YouTube. I don't even care anymore. I don't want to go shopping like that. So I went to those shops, the same ones in Harajuku and stuff, and the same guys are working at these shops, like 15 years, and they're still so happy to see me and like they'll take me to the back, and I'm like, that is a passion for music, and that's a small tool that's underneath us because that's part of the hip hop culture too. Those guys were collecting the records because we sample them or because you sample them. Like that's where that culture came from. And I remember being there, I'm like, damn, these guys are like 50 years old, still going through these records, archiving them for us, selling them. That's their day job, and they just found the purpose in life is like, I want to own this coolest record shop in Tokyo. And I was like, damn, that's the purpose. That's contentment to be like, I don't need to expand to something else. So when you're just happy at what you do, find that something that makes you happy, stick with it and be the best at that. Because if you're only going to be measuring yourself on like how much money you have, how much success you have in that game, it's just you're never going to be happy. So on the same point, just make sure you love it. You got to love it. No matter what it is, you got to love it.
1,000%.
So real, so real. I love it. Diplo, I just have to ask, can you briefly just talk? I grew up in Brooklyn, loving dancehall reggae, being there early on. Can you talk about your reggae, dancehall, the things that you've done and how that came to be with, with Major Lazer and taking it to another level?
You know what's crazy? I was just thinking, we talked about AI, and if AI existed, remember when everybody was doing the dub plates and, getting a dub plate like is crazy, right? And I think Wyclef is the only guy to have he had Michael Jackson on dub. He had Whitney Houston on dub, and a dub plate's like when you find an artist you work with. He had those two in dub. You get him to do a special for you, right?
He has a Michael Jackson
He has a Michael
dub?
Jackson dub. He played it on YouTube. So Wyclef's he had that connection from the Caribbean, but he also was producing those huge records back in the late 90s or 2000s. So I have a couple like that. I have Madonna on dub, and I have Bruno Mars on dub.
Dub plates?
Yeah, because we were working on new records. I was explaining to them can you do this for me on the side, whatever. So it's just I have it in my pocket because that was when you are in Jamaica, that's how you really show off to people. I have this dub plate or whatever. But with AI, we could do any dubs now. It's almost like that game is over in a way. But that's something of the soul culture of Jamaica and dancehall that I was just thinking in my head that is the technology that really would impact that world, because there's guys like David Rodigan, the old school guys that do have a couple. I think he has I have Bunny Wailer on dub because I worked on a Snoop Dogg album. I got lucky to meet him before he passed away, and but a lot of these old reggae guys are passed away.
Rodigan's dub plate game is crazy.
Yeah. Rodigan's incredible. I've seen
Rodigan
him tear shit up. I've seen him destroy Stone Love. Let me just share with some of the people in the audience that may not be up to the minute on what this when a Jamaican sound system DJ battles another sound system DJ, they go around to other artists, classic artists, new artists, and get them to record a version of their hot record or their classic, but they alter some of the lyrics to talk about the DJ or the selector and how he's about to crush this other cat who he's battling. So it goes to, you literally go to guys and you pay them to record specials, but guys like Wyclef and things that Shan were able to get Michael Jackson, Whitney Houston too.
Wait, somebody has a Celine Dion dub plate. I just remember this. Who do you know who that is?
I don't know.
Somebody has a Celine Dion dub plate.
But I know that Kenny Me, some of the reggae guys do have. There's a Rihanna dub of Man Down that they use in the show. That's she only did one for people, but It is the culture kind of died out, I feel a little bit, because back when I used to go to Jamaica, we used to go to those parties and just it was the advent of hip hop. That culture of battling the DJ, the sound system became, the MC would do it live, and of course then you have Herc and the advent of all the Jamaicans in New York doing the hip hop. But for me, I started going to Jamaica, actually on a cruise ship. I got a job, my first time there, on this cruise ship as a DJ when I was just starting out. I was 20 years old, and I was got off in Ocho Rios, and I just got off, and I was let me just work on some music here. And I took a little taxi to Kingston, and the taxi driver was playing Backstreet Boys super loud, and I was like, where are we? And I was like, and we got to the Kingston, I was like, this is a whole different city I didn't really understand. I met a couple guys, and I started working on music, and it ended up becoming this Major Lazer project that I did with Switch and some other producers over, that was like 15 years ago now, but I just kept going back to Jamaica because the producers there for me were the most, at the time, the most influential. They were really doing crazy stuff, mixing like Indian sound. This is like even before Timberland was doing the things, they were mixing like the Diwali rhythm, and they were doing really crazy stuff. It felt like almost like I said again, chaos, like they were making music back in the 2000s, and I was really obsessed with that culture. And I had to go there and learn. So I just went there and started making music with the artists and just loving it. And I actually built a studio there, and I go there like a lot more now than ever.
Wow, fascinating. So now, you guys have both played many music festivals. Talk about the festivals that you liked and why. And yeah, can you share? I know Diplo, you played a bunch. You I'm sure.
Yeah, for me, as a rap kid, it was weird. Like, I'm on stage at Ultra. How the hell did I get here? Right?
What'd you play?
I mean, I played a bunch of his shit.
Yeah. No, he has deep house. He's New Jersey, like New York. He's like a real house head. Like
right.
He puts me onto records. Like he's like, if you grew up in New York, you don't just listen to hip hop. You do house equally, but
absolutely.
It's a little bit of an older game to break into. You do hip hop when you're younger, and you move into house. Same thing for me as you get older, because you can grow older as a house, even disco eventually. You know, some of the DJs, we get older, we get better. I feel like as DJs, because as selectors, you know. But we can't always play like the brand new hip hop records, you know, because we kind of lose touch. Just so what it is, but
yeah, it was. I would probably say Ultra. What was it like? I guess 2017, 18, whatever it was. Probably at least for me, like peak, right? Because it was just like, I don't know how the hell I got here, but my mom is on stage with me, and we are shooting T-shirts out of a T-shirt gun, and it's fucking amazing. Pardon my language.
Love it.
It was great. Definitely, like I said, I wasn't joking. Definitely played a bunch of his shit, played a bunch of my shit. But it was just, it's going back to what I was saying about just doing something because you love it, right? Like, when you do it because you love it, you'll find yourself in so many places you did not expect. Like, who would have thought that I would be sitting here talking to Fab Five, effing Freddy? Make some noise for that, please. I used to watch this guy when I was like 10. Like, I had to steal my neighbor's cable. We used to have to run the wire from his cable box to my living room.
Love it. Amazing. Thank you so much. You've played a lot of festivals. Talk about some that you love and why. And what's that like, playing for those massive crowds? And talk about it.
It's amazing. Listen, the one of the things that I will say, or one of my greatest or most proudest things that I could say about, you know, my life in general is that I get to play these DJ sets, right? And 90% of my set is my own music.
Yeah.
Is that not the coolest feeling?
Yeah, especially when you have hits, like you got like hits though, you know, people.
Wait, don't you start acting up first of all.
With the hip hop records, I'm saying it's you can just drop, like you got bangers. Like when people go see hip hop DJs play the hip hop records, it's record after record. I think I said a lot of times, like Metro Boomin, he just did that amazing Rebel show with the orchestra. So I think a lot of people are taken up on, like he has, like I said, this guy can play everything from rock to like drum. He does everything. He's a real music lover as a DJ. But when people go see hip hop festivals and DJs play them, DJs have big catalogs now. Like, you know, someone like London on the Track, or like I said, Metro did amazing. He did that amazing live orchestra show with his projects, and people are giving a lot more love to the art of hip hop producers. You know, so I think that he was one of the pioneers of being like, Just Blaze, you know, his name, he had the iconic drop. He was the first guy to say like this.
Listen, I had to do that because I'm like, all right, I need people to know who I am somehow.
Yeah.
Right? And I have really bad asthma, so I couldn't rap, right? So I couldn't be a Dre or Pharrell. I'm like, I gotta figure out. I'm just gonna say my name at the beginning of every song and see what happens. It worked out.
Just Blaze.
Just Blaze in the building.
And in Philly, he did so many Freeway records, so like his name was everywhere, all the radio, all the time. Freeway was like our god for like a decade. We just kept playing those records all the time.
Right. No, I think what was the record? What We Do?
Rock the Mic.
And Rock the Mic.
Yeah.
I was blessed to somehow become part of that Philly hip hop infrastructure.
Yeah.
Wasn't intentional, it just happened, but it was amazing.
Diplo, share some of the music festivals you've played, outstanding moments. Share some of that for us, please.
I've been lucky to, at the advent of this sort of like, quote unquote EDM culture, I was like a DJ in that world when these guys came up like Swedish House Mafia and Avicii, and they really ushered in like the huge ultra like movement, and then EDC in Vegas, and all the Vegas clubs, and to go to Ibiza and just be part of that culture all over the world. And once you go from headlining these big festivals to the after parties afterwards, and underground parties, I just kept finding myself wanting more and going deeper and deeper and finding new records and starting a record label. And my love for dance music just kept growing and growing. But I see like cue points here. There was like about Burning Man, because a lot of people here probably go to Burning Man, so I want to mention that as well, because I've been doing Burning Man for like 14 years, and I came as just like a fan, as curious, like what is this? And I loved the imagination of the whole place, because when you do a tour and you're selling tickets and you worry about like festivals and who's going to go, you really have the pressure as an artist to move tickets and have an audience. But with Burning Man, people just kind of walk around and hear something out the corner of the ear, and it might be Just Blaze playing like hip hop or whatever it is. You don't have to like go there and want to see a headliner necessarily. You just kind of find yourself somewhere. It's like improvised, and that's something that doesn't exist in a lot of music these days, where you just have like spontaneity with whether the music you're playing, or you go to a disco, or you go to like a country bar in the middle of Burning Man. But for me, Burning Man's always been like the one place where I could really experiment, because that moment when you're playing and the sun does rise, everybody's like waiting for those kind of sets. You have to find a kind of record that makes sense for that moment. It's only gonna happen once, like that sunrise at Burning Man. So that's a real apex moment for a DJ to figure that out. Like when you have those moments, you got to be in this mood like for 2-3 hours, and you take people on a journey and you find the place where you want to end up. And that's what I love about DJing, because that's when you really understand the audience and the crowd and like the rhythm of people around you. That's kind of like the beauty of DJing. So I think at Burning Man, you can really do that. The spontaneity exists that you don't have at a festival, because you got to time code your shit. You got to have lighting, you have to have dancers. So you don't get that improvisation. That's what I love about Burning Man.
Can somebody bring me to Burning Man, please?
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah.
So we're going to work on that. So I'm a Burning Man board member. And so
Why have I not been?
We're going to work to make this happen. But I saw an interview with you, Diplo, a few years ago, where you were talking about the thrill of playing at sunrise. And it was so special to me that you were asked to play and what that meant. Like at Burning Man, you go way out into deep playa, and they have big sound art cars. And it's a special moment to be out there. 2, 3, 4, 5,000 people gather around these massive art cars in a huge expanse that feels like you're on another planet, and the sun comes up and people cheer. It's an ecstatic, hard to describe moment. And you talked about it so powerfully, what that meant and means to you.
Yeah. And I think honestly, Just, you can't really get brought there. You just got to go, because everybody, no one's getting really brought. You just kind of got to.
Right. Nobody's getting flued out.
Yeah, you got to buy your tent and fucking they put it down on the ground and like sleep in it. You don't really get brought. And then you got to get yourself out too. You got to pack your shit up, or else people get real mad at you.
Wait, so you're saying that I could just like go out there with a tent and bring some speakers and just get busy?
You got to find a good community of people.
Catch me at Burning Man next
water.
year. All right.
You make sure you got that. But even if you don't got food and water, you'll find it there. I've been the first one I was there. I had nothing, and people just will take care of you. It's like that kind of community. But it reminds me a lot of like Carnival too, because it's like the sound car people follow. They're riding out and they find a place to sit, and then the party gets bigger and bigger, and you just kind of you wander off. You might go pee somewhere, and then you hear something else. You walk somewhere else. Like you just kind of do whatever. I like that.
Well, Last Burning Man, we had a lot of rain and then we had a lot of mud. And one of the biggest stories was you and Chris Rock escaping, getting a ride out. Chris is an old friend of mine. I wish I would have caught you guys out there, but that was a very special Burning Man that really turned into something almost on a Woodstock level, because people reached out and helped each other, and it turned into something very special.
Yeah, Chris Rock really thought people were gonna come and eat him. He was so scared that last night, because he was like, because he was in this really fancy camp, and he was like, we had like really nice food, and he was looking outside, and people were like in the mud trying to like get, and he was like, if they find out what we got in this camp, they're gonna kill us. So he was like real scared the last day, and I was like, nah, man, this is like a really peaceful like vibe. No one's gonna eat you. And then the next day, though, he was like up early, and we just walked out. We were like, we got to go. So, yeah, we just got out.
An amazing moment. So let me change it. Let me ask you guys about the.
I have a random Chris Rock story. I'm sorry to cut you off.
Go right ahead.
I spent 8 hours in his house setting up a DJ setup for him that I don't think he knows I did.
Was he trying to DJ?
Yeah, like he used to have apparently he used to be a DJ when he was a kid, and a family friend reached out and was like, yeah, Chris wants to start DJing again. And I'm like, all right. So remember that story, if anybody is familiar with his stand-up, where he talks about how he had to work to become this famous rich comedian, and then his neighbor is just a dentist.
Yes.
Right? But his neighbor, the dentist, has this amazing house.
Yes.
That dentist house is crazy. So I spent a few hours. I'm like, all right, yeah, no problem. Called who did I call? I think Newmark or Denon, somebody. I called Denon. Chris Rock wants to be a DJ again. All right, so fine. I'm doing all this. And I'm setting up, and I'm like, does he even know that Just Blaze is in his house, like building his DJ setup? Probably not. But goddamn, that Dennis house is dope. Yeah. He was not BSing.
Wow. Amazing Chris Rock story. Can you please tell me what types of music you guys listen to other than the genres you're known for making, producing, and playing live for folks? What does Just Blaze and Diplo listen to?
I'd have to look at my phone and tell you.
Yeah, I listen to everything. I mean, I grew up in Florida, so I really grew up loving Miami bass and electro and like bass music and a lot of metal, because there's a lot of big metal bands from here that I used to love. And that energy got me into like music. I like went to hardcore shows in my neighborhood, and like they used to be at the church where I lived when I was younger. So I loved that. And then as I got older, I got into country music. My family was into country music. In the last 5 years, it's just been, the genre has really expanded, and some amazing songwriters, and there's been a lot of success with touring, and I've become friends with a lot of guys that go into Nashville, and I just felt like that was something I wanted to learn. Like, you know, just like when I went to Jamaica, I'm fascinated with music, so when I get into it, you just go in, you know? And I'm so lucky now. We were younger, we just had the liner notes, right? So we'd buy a record and figure out who did everything, and now we have Wikipedia, and you can meet people, and you can, you know, there's so much access to information that I wish I had when I was younger, but I'm glad we didn't, because we found things out in a special way.
Right.
But kids do have this access point now that I hope they can take advantage of. When we were younger, I remember even like getting a SP1200 or an MPC, I didn't know how to use it, you know. And you have, right. If you lived in New York or whatever, you probably had some friends with it. I had Florida, I like the only one at Sam Ash. So I was like, I had to learn how to use it. I never used it right. So I mean, like, right. Now there's tutorials for everything, and it's so easy to like get a guitar or learn how to make a certain sound you like. But back then, you had to figure it out yourself.
That said, I don't think there's necessarily a right or wrong way to use the machine, right? Ultimately, it's like, you know, I used to regret dropping out of piano classes when I was a kid. But had I stayed in those classes, all I would have learned was somebody else's idea of what music was supposed to sound like,
yeah,
right?
Exactly.
Like, right. So, like, ultimately, my off-kilter, just not understanding is what led me to be successful.
Yeah.
Ultimately, right?
I think that's kind of what hip hop is beautiful at, because a lot of us, we could have been musicians, and we did the rugged way of just becoming. We were more collectors. We were more in our minds, and we were more creative directors. I think that's what gave birth to such an insane sound that became hip hop. But there's still time to learn piano. I know that Flying Lotus.
Oh yeah,
Flying
now
Lotus,
we can
like
learn.
he was like always want to learn piano. Now he's like he just learned on YouTube over 3 years, and now he's like a proper pianist.
Dre told me, Burt Bacharach was like, I want you to mix this album for me. And he was like, fine, I won't charge you. Just, you have to teach me how to play piano. At 50 years old, he learned to play piano from Burt Bacharach.
That's crazy.
So Dre plays now.
Yes. And he gets busy.
Wow.
Yes.
Fascinating. Okay, here we go. Versus. I don't know if how many of you guys are hip to this platform that popped off during the pandemic that Swiss Beats and Timbaland put together. This became a huge treat during the pandemic where hip-hop, R&B producers, rappers and singers, even dancehall acts like Bounty Killer and Beanie Man had a mock battle / showdown sound clash playing their hits. Now, Just Blaze, you battled Swiss Beats a couple of years before Sound Clash Style.
I think it was like right before the pandemic hit.
Yeah, it's on YouTube. It's a lot of, like a couple of million.
That some people refer to that as like the origin of Versus. It's whatever. That was really, so Netflix and Mass Appeal were doing a documentary on me. It was 2018, if I'm not mistaken. So my thing with the documentary was like, I don't want to make it about me. I'd rather just celebrate the art of production. Mm-hmm. So the whole thing was, if you watch the documentary, I'm just going and visiting all the producers that I love and respect, right? So I went to go see Have, went to go see Manny Fresh, obviously went to go see Swiss. Somehow, the trash talk got crazy. And next thing I know, the next day I'm back at his studio battling. And I'm like, oh, what are we doing?
So now you guys are playing beat for beat. These are unreleased or released, like just
a little bit of everything. We're doing live sample recreations. We're chopping beats up. Next thing I know, I look up and there's like 100 people in the room. I'm like, dude, I thought we were just doing this for camera. We were originally just doing it for camera for the documentary. It was supposed to be like a 20-minute thing. 3 hours later, I'm having asthma. I told you I got bad asthma. I'm sitting there like, yo, we gotta cut it.
So when the Versus platform blew up, did you ever think that you may want to get a battle going with Swiss Beats and go at it, or did that ever?
Nah, we already did it. Like, you gonna do it twice? That's a little weird.
Got it. So my question for you, Diplo, I'm sure you were aware. I see you're dialed in on everything going on. The thought of if dance music can be included, would you have wanted to take part? And who might be somebody you know, not to be aggressively competitive, but
we should have. That should have.
Yeah, and I was gonna do. I actually did hit Calvin Harris to do one of those things, and he didn't. In the end, he didn't want to do it with me because I would take it way too seriously because of like the dancehall culture, because I knew how to do dubs and stuff.
Yes,
I think I would go too crazy, but he would have been a good adversary, I feel like, because he does a lot of pop production as well. But there used to be a party I did back in Philly when I was still in college called Beat Society. And it was at this little club called Black Lily. Do you remember this party?
Of course.
About that
Might have
club.
been there too.
Wow.
Yeah, I was definitely at Beat Society. Shout out to Steph and all of them. Yeah.
Crew. So this is like me and him. I was like still in college back then. But this is like 25 years, a long time ago. So this Beat Society was like a bunch of producers lived in Philly, like kids that just produced music, and we worked as social workers or at restaurants. There was like probably 30 kids that were like it was a producer city because of Timberland, because of Larry Gold Studios. There was just a home for hip hop producing there, and I was part of that culture. And Beat Society was where I would pick out a record. I did a couple where I hosted it, where I'd pick out the vinyl, and then I would give to people, and they would make a beat that out of the vinyl, whatever it was. They'd pick a record out of it, and Kanye like did one, and he ended up using that beat for a Mobb Deep record.
Yep.
So it was a really cool culture that we had in Philly that was just kind of people battling with the NPCs. That they probably did it somewhere else, but I remember Philly is where we started that little culture, and it was a really cool party. Actually, A-Track did it with Goldie Awards too. That kind of, he ended up doing the same kind of thing, and I think he still does that. But that's a really cool party.
Wow. If you guys miss Versus, a lot of that's also on YouTube, like everything else. It was fun during the pandemic, saved a lot of us.
Indeed.
Yes, indeed. Can you give me a snapshot of your creative process? Each of you guys talk a little bit about what it's like producing, working with another act, just like a snapshot of how that goes down with you guys in the studio.
I get inspired by gear, right? Meaning like I actually have some historic pieces in my collection that have been used for very well-known groups and acts and things like that. Ultimately, yes, we can make records on our iPhones at this point, right? Or on our iPads. But I get inspired by being surrounded by analog gear.
Talk about the kind of gear.
We'd be here till tomorrow.
Okay.
I don't want to waste your time.
Okay.
But no, like stuff like the Prophet 5, the Oberheim 4 voice or 8 voice, the Ross modular or a Moog Model 10. Like I just get inspired by, you know what it is? I realize what it is for me. I get inspired by being able to have access to the gear that was used to make the records that inspired me, if that makes sense. So like when you look at like the Herbie Hancock album covers, right, where he's surrounded by all these synthesizers, or you know the Stevie Wonder album covers, or on the back where he's like this, you know, with a bunch of those synths, like being able to have those and being able to, you know, potentially have access to those sounds. I don't have that talent, but I have access to the sounds at least, right?
Got it.
It's inspiring to me.
Diplo, please.
That's a really gets even nerdier, that subculture, because there's like some keyboards that are like just there's only 3 of them.
Right.
Like there's that one Herbie Hancock one. There's like, it's a real deep. Like those are expensive when you get into that. That's like after record collecting, you start buying those things. It gets crazy. But me, I'm the same way. Like I like new technology too. There's like a really good plugin called Arcade. Have you used that for native instruments? That just like
Super dope.
Just gives you random ideas. You have a song already in a key, and you can play this. Pick a sound. You know, say Scottish folk. You pick a kit, and it makes the sounds. It's like something very easy. It's almost like pre-AI. But for me, every time I work with somebody or by myself, it definitely just it's just random. You know, if it's a big pop star or a songwriter, you just want to make sure there's chemistry, and then there's not always chemistry. And you want to put them in a different experience, or you know, maybe pick up a guitar and play it, or you come up with a sample. You know, like that's something I started doing again. I wasn't sampling for years, and I started picking up a couple, and I'm like, yo, let's just rework this. And now there's ways with Melodyne where you could take like a really well-known sample and flip it into 4 different ways. And there's so much technology to use in our wheelhouse now. But really, it's just about something inside you. You know, you gotta like have an idea, and hopefully, I like collaboration. So just being with somebody and feeding off their energy is like the best way to make something, whether it's a guitar player or a singer or another producer, and you just show off your ideas and kind of make something spontaneous like that.
Is it a definitive point for you when you know that the record is finished?
No.
Or
never.
Do you?
Gosh, no.
Never.
Well, someone told me this once. Records never get finished; they just escape.
Yeah.
Whoa.
That's the best way to put it. Thank you. I'm gonna start using that.
They don't.
Right.
I remember I was in the studio with XXX Temptation, you know, back in the day I was working on his record, and we made this idea. It was so bad, I thought, like, what is this? We'll finish it tomorrow. He went home and put it on SoundCloud like that night, and that's it. The song is out, done. You know, I never got to finish. It was between keys. It was like such a mess, but that's just it was gone. It escaped. Like, you know, sometimes in the internet, it's there forever now. So it's like
that can happen today.
Yeah, and sometimes, like, you know, Kanye was like taking records down to add new drums off of a
album release. Kanye says no, it's not. It's not finished.
Pablo, he kept doing it over.
Stronger, he did the drums again.
Yep.
He had Timberland do the snares. And I couldn't even tell the difference, but he took it off the internet.
No, I remember getting that call. Like, yo, I got Tim in the studio. I need a kick. And I'm like,
You wanted the kick on that?
I don't know what he ended up using. I just sent him a ton of kicks, but then I'm like, all right, cool. All right, here's a bunch of snares, and then a record came out, got deleted, came back out again, and I'm like, all right, I'm not sure.
So he did break the rule where you could redo it.
Right.
He's the only guy, but I think mostly you just kind of like, because after you listen back to records too, you're like, damn, those drums could be cleaner, or I have a new sound I want to do. But I mean, hip hop in general, drums just have changed so much, like the way they sound and the way that the knock was and how soft it was back in the day. And like back when, Large Professor was doing stuff and Tribe was just using straight drum breaks. It maybe add a little 808 underneath it, but just it was so small. Now, like it's like after 808s, everything has to hit hard. Because we're working in cars, working in nightclubs. It's not just about like listening to it on a boombox or radio. You got to like have it really bang. So the trends, we always pay attention to the trends, the way hip hop's made.
So when I was coming up, I was a double cassette boombox guy. That was how I listened to all my music. Never had a my parents had a turntable that I would destroy. What do you guys listen to music on? What's your favorite way to listen to music now?
Well, I have the blessing of having an amazing sound system in the house.
Okay.
But ultimately, when I'm creating, I have to listen in earbuds. Because that's what the majority of us consume music in these days, right?
Or your laptop speaker.
Right, or my laptop speakers. I remember when the first time I met 40, Drake's engineer, he was telling me they had just finished mastering the first album. So we were talking about, what was the song, Over? And I was like, yo, what did you mix that on? And he's like, yo, I finished that record on an iHome alarm clock in a hotel room.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what? Because the record sounds so amazing.
Yeah. If it sounds good on that, it's going to sound good on everything.
Exactly.
So.
Yep.
Wow. Pretty incredible. And you, Dip?
I listen to whatever. I don't really, just however I do it. But when I want to listen to new music or just something I never heard of, there's an app I use called Radio with like 4 O's at the end, and you'd love this app. I don't know if it's that popular, but you just pick a country, and you pick a decade, and then you put like weird, fast, slow, and then you make like it just plays the radio from that country from that decade. So you go to like Zambia or like Venezuela or like in 1980s and Japan. You can make a whole like little tour, and it just for me it's like going back to the record shops when I was younger. You just put on stuff that's just so random. I love that app.
Wow. So we're getting close to wrapping this up. I want to ask, entrepreneurially speaking, what are you guys working on outside of music? Because I know you guys are doing other things, right?
Nah.
If I told you I'd have to kill you, I'd rather not.
Diplo, what you working on, baby?
I'm a father of a bunch of kids, so I'm trying to like work on them a little bit more often than I was. And I think I built a studio in Jamaica, like I was telling you. So I just opened it, and I'm really proud of like putting that part of Jamaica on the map again. People come and travel to there, and then expanding beyond just DJing all the time. I started like a run club. So instead of going out to raves late night, we run 5 kilometers and we party middle of the day. So we're gonna start that in September in the Bay Area in Seattle, because that's I think partying can be like that. It doesn't have to be like, staying up real late and doing drugs. You can kind of like enjoy yourself and exercise too. And then as far as tech, I just invest in things that I love, and think this place. I don't want to talk about that right now. If it's like, but maybe wants to talk to me about it later, we can. But in the music side, I'm just excited about putting new music out all the time and expanding my catalog, whether it's, like I said, country and house music, and working on I'm a Piano records, whatever it is.
I'm a Piano?
Yeah, I put out a record with Major League DJs last year, so I'm working with those guys. I'm excited about African music in general. Has just been like crazy the last 4 or 5 years.
I'm a Piano is a new form of African music originating out of South Africa. Ghana and Nigeria have a new kind of music called Afro beats with an S, but I'm a Piano is amazing.
Yeah, it's like jazz meets techno in a way. It meets Africa, and it's a very
Meets house.
yeah unique and groovy as hell. Like comes from like remember maybe there was a genre called Kwaito back that was like African house music from South Africa that the DJs would take UK garage records and play them on 33 instead of 45. So the drum beat was like, and it was like this slowed down house, and that kind of mutated into what Amapiano was. But there's an amazing music from that world. I mean, South Africa has such a crazy culture and history for the last 40 years that it really has some of the most amazing, from jazz to rock and roll to Amapiano, and of course guys like Black Coffee. There's so much range in that country.
Black Coffee is kind of like the father of that scene in a way, if you would.
Yeah.
Been known for a long time.
Yeah, like he's like in his 50s, and he been a house DJ in Africa for 30 years. So it's like the history there is deep.
House music all night long. Well, the last question, what do you guys envision for music going forward? I mean, the future is moving at us faster and faster, and I'm just curious, what would you like to see or hear that we haven't yet seen or heard?
For me, I just want to see more passion, more love. Like I said, the more you do it because you love it, the better the music is.
Yeah.
Right. So that's all I want to see.
Yeah, more quality control for sure.
Exactly.
More quality control.
Here's the thing, right? And I'm not saying this from a standpoint of hatred by any means. It's amazing that we now have, that so many of us have the access to potentially create music. That doesn't mean we all should be doing it. But hold on. But I'm happy that everybody gets a shot, or that so many more of us get a shot now.
Yeah. I also think access to music is so important that when I was younger, you kind of had to get in where you fit in. Like I grew up, I should have just been in a metal band. I shouldn't have made my way to Jamaica or whatever to work on music. Or you shouldn't be, going to make house records, or like a young black kid in Nebraska shouldn't be making like goth music, or, look at someone like JPEG Mafia. There's so many different people now that, because they have, when I was younger, hip hop was an American thing, and now there's like hip hop from Moscow that's 40 years old. So we're like, it's like, you can't think that it's like ours. You can't be so protected. It's like everybody has their chance to do all these things, and I love that we're in a place where every kid has access, to what he wants to do, or experiment with who he is and what he wants to be and what he can create. And that's something that we got out of it. We're lucky that we actually were able to grow through that, but nobody else thought that way when we were younger. Now every kid does feel like I can do anything, and I love that, as long as you do have the attention to detail, and you have the discipline to make it great.
Indeed.
Wow. Thank you. That was incredibly generous, incredibly insightful. Ladies and gentlemen, Diplo and Just Blaze.